Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. We have Ted Starkey joining us. We'll have Dennis Gorman later in the show. So a cast of thousands here on the Hockey Buzzcast. But as always, we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Hey, so let's talk about Bruce Boudreau. He was on the WWE Raw last night. It was funny because I think they did it from Hershey. I was flipping the channels, and he was talking to the tag team champs, two Canadians, Kevin. What's his last?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Sami Zayn and Kevin something. Anyhow, it was funny because Bruce is there and he's like giving him like this generic locker room speech, and it was good. It was like a good little comedy skit. And I got to tell you, like, if Bruce wanted to, he could be like the next good manager in the WWE because he likes wrestling, so he understands it, and everybody sort of knows his deal. So he would walk right in there and be fine with that job.
Ted, next
Kevin Owens, thank you.
Next show, he'll come in and says, and it's Bruce Boudreau, the Grand Wizard of Wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce is great. Obviously, I covered him for a couple of years, and he's always been great with the media. Always he's never met a camera he doesn't like.
Right.
And it's interesting because he's still in the conversation for the Caps job. I mean, I don't think he gets it, but he did Caps pregame. He's still closely tied with the organization. Obviously, him and his wife now own the junior team in Hershey. So obviously they're deeply tied with that community and the Caps organization. But no, I can't say enough good stuff about Bruce. He's a terrific guy. He's always fun on camera, and he never shies away from anything, as you can see.
Well, he's loved in Toronto. I know that he did some work for NHL Network, and I remember a few years ago when, in between jobs, there was talk about him being an assistant coach under Sheldon Keefe with the Leafs. The funny thing is he's always wanted to coach Toronto. I guess his mom's, who was in her 90s, is still living in Toronto. That would probably be a dream job. I just don't know whether with the current craziness in Toronto that Bruce is going to end up there. But I mean, I thought he did a pretty decent job, Russ. I thought he was pretty entertaining.
He was legit, as they say. All right, we'll get into hockey now.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the game last night.
You're not going to introduce Ted? You're not going to give him
a little... I already did, you dope! In the pre-show, I said Ted Starkey is with us.
Yeah, but some people, the pre-show cuts off, Mike, and then when people listen to the...
Well, okay, for those people, they can go screw. Okay,
wow.
But
I'm well known. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, geez.
Just trying to make sure we're
Ted.
Constructive criticism from Mike.
Constructive criticism on the show every single friggin' time. Okay, so last night, Ted, the worst conference finals in NBA and NHL history continued because it looks like we're going to have 4 sweeps the way things are going. Denver swept the Lakers. Miami's going to probably stick a fork in the pathetic Celtics in the NBA. That's the team that I root for. And in the NHL last night, Game 3 of Florida, Carolina, not a snoozer, but 1-0 games unless goaltenders are absolutely standing on their head, or not what I would call the most exciting thing. Bobrovsky played really well, and it was a 1-0 victory on Sam Reinhart's goal. But what do you think of this whole series? Because right now, I mean, Carolina looks like they have a pop gun offense, and they can't get by Bobrovsky.
Yeah, I mean, they really. You look at the playoffs; they hadn't faced a team with this good goaltending. Obviously, you see when you saw Carolina in the first round, obviously they had trouble with the Islanders. Obviously the goaltending was good, but they still had struggle to score. New Jersey, they got a pretty lousy tandem to face. Vanacek and and basically and they didn't do so well. But they seem like they're taking a lot of shots from the perimeter. They don't seem like they're really crashing the net like they need to. Obviously they were worried about Svechnikov before the playoffs. He's back, but how healthy is he? And they just don't seem to be generating much. And on the other hand, Florida seems to be a team of destiny. They're really If they've won 10 out of 11 in this time of year is amazing, and really the one game they lost, they almost won.
We'll continue to talk about this as Florida's run potentially continues. But I mean, do we recognize the fact that had the Pittsburgh Penguins beat Chicago or beat Columbus, the Florida would have missed.
Mm-hmm. And then can't think that way.
Like I know, but it's just okay. That would have either one of those things happens. They miss, then they get in by the hair of their chinny chin. And they're down 3-1 to Boston. And Brad Marchand has that breakaway in Game 5 that almost beats Bobrovsky. And if that had gone in, then they would have been done. They come back from 3-1. They beat Boston. They beat Toronto convincingly in 5 games. And now they've won the first 3 against Carolina. I mean, it's unbelievable, the streak that this team is on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like, like you were saying, they were inches away from losing in Game 5 in Boston. And now they've won, they won 3 in a row against the Bruins, 4 out of 5 against Toronto, now 3-0 against Carolina. None of those are slouch teams. It's kind of like you looked at them this year. They were so disappointing for the first half of the year. They're coming off the President's Trophy season last year. Got rid of Andrew Burnett, brought in Paul Maurice, and you thought, well, this team just does not like what's happening. But, with Tkachuk and Bobrovsky playing up to their potential this time of year, once a lot of it is once you start to believe in your team, a lot of good things can happen. And clearly after that Game 5 win in Boston, when they went down to, Sunrise, rallied to beat the Bruins. I think the stat was what's even more amazing, of the 10 wins, they've trailed in 7 of them. It's not like they're coming out of the gate, blowing teams out and shutting them down. They're rallying, and they just seem to, score goals at an opportune time. And, it's very Kings-like from 2014.
Yes.
You see these teams who just get hot at the right time. But it's an amazing run, and obviously I don't think Carolina's going to stop them at this point. It's probably going to be up to Vegas.
And Bobrovsky is doing his best Jonathan Quick imitation, Russ. But I mean, in my mind, Tkachuk is if they win, Tkachuk is going to be the Conn Smythe Trophy winner because he's scoring all these big goals.
I don't think so. I think it's Bobrovsky. I'm telling you, he has taken away the will of really good teams here and teams that everybody thought could make it to the Cup. I get what Tkachuk is doing, but without Bob, Tkachuk would not be in where they are in this series. They just wouldn't. And the other thing that's killing Carolina is Florida's commitment to team defense. Their forwards like Lucitarian and Lundell and everybody else is making up for whatever defense that everybody felt they didn't have during the regular season and probably still don't have. They're doing it. And
that's the bizarre thing, is the fact that, they're playing this strapped down defensive style that, I mean, is like consistent with the 95 New Jersey Devils.
This is where I give Maurice credit. I think Maurice realized if we have the offense, if we could just tap it down on defense, Carolina just doesn't have the offense. They're used to tapping it down on defense. Carolina's playing every game like it's, 1 goal up or 1 goal down or even tied. And they're not going to survive that way. They've got to open things up this game or they're done. Like, it doesn't matter who they put in net.
And somebody in the chat was saying they lost Barkov last night in the first period, and I guess Paul Maurice after the game said, yeah, he had to go to a bar mitzvah or something like that. Now of course we're not going to find out the details of the injury, but Ted, I said, is this a David Krejci circa 2010 thing where they lose Barkov and all of a sudden Carolina can turn it around? I don't think so, because Carolina just doesn't have the offense to be able to turn it around. I think they could win a game or two, and I don't know whether Barkov is seriously injured, but I think it's no return here for Carolina.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, obviously Barkov, I think it'd be more of an impact if they advance to the next round, just because it's going to be, I think Vegas is the best team left, and it will take a lot to beat them. I mean, I still think, obviously they've had a great run. The thing that probably will work against Florida too is they're going to have a lengthy break if they finish a sweep. And The last thing you want when you're rolling is to have, 6 or 7 days off before the final, especially facing a good team. But
no, that's fair. I mean, I agree with that.
Although Bobrovsky could use,
and he's losing 10, 15 pounds a game. But I think, that's no joke. I mean, he really is. That's what
okay. I'll send him 45 of my pounds to lose.
Yeah, you would be in the hospital. The thing about it is, though, I'm not giving up on Dallas, because really Dallas had that last game in hand, but they have not been able to figure out how to clamp it down when they have a lead. If they could just figure that part out, I think it would be a much tougher series with Vegas. So I think they're closer to getting back in their series for sure. They have to win tonight. Like, we know that. But I do feel like after last game, they pretty much had that one until they didn't. So I think they can still do it.
Well, Ted, the one thing I picked Dallas in that series, and I did because I thought Ottinger would be the determining factor. But Aiden Hills played really well, and Ottinger, especially in game one, I thought he was not good. Game two, he was pretty decent. I don't think he was at fault for the giveaway late in regulation that Marcia tied up the game or the game winner. So, I mean, I still think Dallas can get back, and Dallas is going home, so they haven't lost a home game yet. And with the old saying, if you're only behind when you're losing your home games, so they got to win one. They got to win their home games and win one in Vegas, which is still possible.
Right. Yeah. No, I think I think having a home game now is obviously it's a big difference between the two series. Obviously, Carolina losing 2 at home, which was such a tough place to play. And, Dallas is a tough place to play in its own. And, and Ottinger does have to be better. I mean, as I said, I think of the 4 teams left, I think Vegas is significantly a better team. They were one of the preseason or the pre-playoff teams I thought that could actually win the cup, win 4 rounds. And I think Dallas can make it a series. I'm not sure they can pull off the, win 4 or 5, but I think they're going to make a better series than Carolina is right now.
Yeah, let's switch to the coaching carousel. You mentioned it, I think, before we went on the air about Washington. I read Tariq El-Bashir's piece in The Athletic regarding who is in the mix in Washington, and one of the names, and I wrote about it for Hockey Buzz today, was Spencer Carberry, who is the Leafs assistant coach. Now, Ted, he coached in Hershey. He was AHL Coach of the Year. He coached a lot of the young players that are currently in the Capitals organization, like Connor McMichael. They seem to want somebody who can work with the young players that they're going to be bringing along over the next couple of years. So he, in my mind, I think Halpern is another name I think they're going to go down that road rather than rehashing Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think those are the 2 names I think you'll see most commonly mentioned. I think Halpern is a good candidate for him because obviously he played with a couple of players during his 2 tenures in Washington. He's pretty tight with the ownership group, and obviously he went to after retiring from the Caps, he went to Syracuse, was an assistant coach, Tampa assistant coach under John Cooper, and he's pretty familiar. And I think that they're looking for a guy who can kind of motivate this team. Like the last hire was more to win a Stanley Cup. I'm not sure they believe they're going to win another Stanley Cup. I think maybe they can make a run, but I think they know this core is kind of past its prime. They want to be competitive and kind of usher in a new era of players eventually. Mm-hmm. But I think, those 2 names would be the ones. Obviously, Carberry, as you mentioned, knows some of the players in Hershey, and obviously the Bears are playing deep this year, so they'll take a look in the organization as well. But I think it's going to be one of those 2 names.
Yeah, Anaheim and the Rangers are the 2 other teams that apparently have been mentioned in regards to Carberry. And I mean, with the unstable situation in Toronto, if they decide to let go of Sheldon Keefe, I would think if Carberry hasn't taken a job yet, that they would want to interview him because he is a very good candidate. But let's switch to the Rangers here, Russ, because we've heard Carberry, we've heard Peter Laviolette, we've heard a few other names. Where is this going?
I don't know. I thought we were going to hold that till maybe Gorman comes on.
Oh, okay.
That's Ranger search with that. Let's talk about the outdoor games.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So the outdoor games this year are going to be at MetLife, and they're going to have Rangers, Isles, Devils, Flyers. So obviously that's what the Flyers were sort of hinting at when they were ushering in Keith Jones last week, but I guess couldn't say anything. Now it leaked out. It's interesting because I didn't know if the league would want the Flyers because they don't really have a marquee player, but Jack Hughes is the marquee player. So I guess it's kind of like, for lack of a better term, they'll have the Devils against the Washington Generals. No, Flyers are a little better than that, but you get what I'm saying. That's really, from a marketing perspective, the Flyers fans will come. There's no doubt about that. But team-wise, yeah, the shine's more on the Devils at this point. I'm sure Torts is just going to love being in part of an outdoor game. I remember how much he enjoys that. Kidding.
He has a chance to wear his cowboy hat or whatever.
Yeah. I don't remember what the hat he wore the last time in Philly. I have to go back and look it up. I have pictures, but at any rate, what's interesting about this, and some people are like, I hate to get to MetLife. It's really not bad. If you take the train, it's the way to go. Driving sucks going to MetLife, but the train's easy. So I just drive to now my problem is I'm not living near a train station on the Northeast Corridor, but if you do, just take the train. But as far as these games, these will be better, I think, than the Yankee Stadium ones. I do. The Yankee Stadium ones, the Yankees were stupid. They kept the windows open. I don't know why. Nobody understands that. We froze. I remember talking to Linda Cohn, and both of us were freezing especially the game against the Devils. It was brutal. The Islander game was not great either.
Did they have the Hebrew national hot dog? That's the most.
No, actually, no. I don't know. I'm in the press box. I can tell you this: they ran out of hot chocolate, and for the New York Yankees to run out of hot chocolate is a joke for all the money they have. So that was.
No, wait. This is an NHL sponsored event. They're the ones responsible.
No, Mike.
Don't blame the Yankees.
No. This is a Yankee problem.
No. Yes.
But at any rate, they'll have the ability to sell more tickets, obviously, at MetLife. MetLife, once you're in your seat, it's fine. It does take a little while to get in your seat. It does. I mean, there's no lie about that. If you time yourself, it'll take you like 30-something minutes from the point you get to your car if you go straight to your seat.
Right.
No matter where you're sitting, that's pretty much the amount of time because of all the escalators and different areas you have to walk, and it's just big. But I think it will be good for hockey games. I think the matchups are right. I think I'll probably go to both because if it's doable, I'll do both because that's what I did last time, and I'll enjoy it. And I think a lot of people will enjoy it too. Ted, what's the buzz? I mean, you're at Newsday now. What's the talk there?
I mean, obviously, Islanders fans have been clamoring for a game for a long time. Obviously they haven't been in one since the Yankee Stadium game. There's always the perceived slight that, it's not a national network, stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously Islanders Rangers would be great experience. I guess the only drawback is you're taking away one of the games at UBS Arena for it because, obviously you got to come from somewhere. And Flyers Devils will be interesting. I know I saw they were talking about a concert. Maybe that's kind of goose ticket sales. Because that might be a harder sell to sell 82,000 for that game. Especially with the Flyers. Obviously it's an easier.
I'll give you an example who you could use.
Billy Joel.
No, Fish. Because Trey Anastasia is a huge Flyers fan. I met him a couple years ago. What's more than that? It's probably like 10 years ago when the Flyers had it was 2010. It was more than 10. In 2010, I met him, and he was in the locker room taking pictures with the trophy and everything when the Flyers had what is the Prince of Wales trophy? Is that it?
Yeah.
And so he was taking pictures of that with his dad and having a great time. Fish and that would do it because they have a good following.
Oh yeah, I mean they definitely look like they're going to tag someone along because obviously Rangers Islanders you could sell out I think without much issue, but obviously Devils have a limited ticket base and the Flyers. I mean they have a lot of fans, but it depends on how the season goes too. If they have another terrible season,
some are want to wait and see. Some will do it for the fun of it. But you're right; it's a lot of seats. So I could see if you do add a concert to that. Billy Joel's not bad, Mike, but I don't think that's the right fit for this.
Get Taylor Swift. You sell the tickets.
Get Billy Joel for Billy Joel for the Islanders game. It would do well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. Get Ted Nugent.
Consider he's from Hicksville and all that. Sure.
So, yeah. No, I was gonna say, typical Mets fan to pick on the Yankees. This
is what happened. Go ask Linda Cohn. You don't even have to ask me. I don't think she's a Met fan. She'll tell you.
No, but what I'm saying is that's an NHL sponsored event.
No, but go ask Anthony too. Like it's the same.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get up.
It's the same people who work Yankee Stadium that were working in the press box. And we didn't understand the minute we walked in. It's the middle of winter, and they had the windows open. Like why? Why in the world?
Hey, you remember BMO? Remember the Centennial Classic? Remember where we were assigned to sit? And Ted, this was an event at a soccer stadium in downtown Toronto on New Year's Day, and they had an auxiliary press box that had a monitor with a opaque plastic covering, so you couldn't even watch the game. It was like you were in a tent.
Yeah, it was like looking through a tent covering.
Yeah. So we ended up. sitting downstairs watching it on a big screen TV instead of
that was warmer than Yankee Stadium. Even
the weird one with NC State, they didn't have the windows open and it was soundproof almost. You couldn't tell anything that was going on other than the TV. So it was bizarre. You were right there, but you heard like even a cheer.
You heard nothing.
No, I heard nothing. It was like being in a phone booth.
But Russ, maybe that's the musical act. Maybe they're going to get Bryan Adams because he was there at Centennial Classic. And
you got to think more like who the Flyers and Devils fan bases would like.
Springsteen.
Springsteen's not doing it for a hockey game. Be serious. Like, I don't know. Southside Johnny's not enough.
He'll do it.
Who?
Give him $20 million and he'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, if Springsteen's tour is over, Max Weinberg is a season ticket holder of the Devils. He does have a band. That might work if you get like Max Weinberg's All-Stars, like a Ringo's All-Stars thing. That might work because I know he's toured on his own before. Maybe something like that would be good.
Ted, I wanted to get your opinion outside of the Toronto area perspective of what's gone on over the last few days. I know I have my opinions on the goings of the Maple Leafs with Brendan Shanahan, firing Kyle Dubas before his contract was up, and now Dubas made a statement today. I wrote about this. The only line that I thought was curious, and I'll read it here. He says, in a statement, Dubas referred to his need to assess and evaluate my own view to the future, both with respect to the necessary direction of the club and ensuring that I had the full support of my family for what I knew would be required in the offseason and in the years to follow. Basically, it's been talked about that his proposal was to sort of streamline the decision-making process because there were instances over the last few years where he wanted to do something, but the board or Shanahan didn't want to, or Shanahan and the board wanted him to do something and he had to do it because he was taking orders, and that was affecting, what he thought was the proper direction of the team. Now he's the general manager. The ownership runs the ship. So if they weren't on board with what he wanted to do, then that's a valid reason to let him go. But I just think that sort of this looks pretty bad from an inside perspective. If somebody covers the team. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem, like I always trace the Leafs issues back to when they signed Tavares, because I mean, obviously Tavares hasn't been bad, but it's kind of was an unnecessary ad. They're already strong at the forward position, and you're basically committing the cap to 4 players, which means those have to be your 4 best players. And I always thought, one of the reasons they've struggled in the playoffs, they're just a very flawed team. The construction is flawed. You can't fix problems if half your cap is tied up in 4 guys. And I think obviously, but what we're seeing after the firing is basically this was management's call. It wasn't necessarily Dubas's call to get a guy like Tavares, but I just think, they were just so poorly constructed. And now, obviously they have a tough decision to make because you got to really get rid of at least 1, if not 2 of these guys. And obviously Tavares is kind of tailing at the end of his career.
But he's not going anywhere.
He's still really good. I'm not worried about Tavares, to be honest.
Yeah, but that just seems to me, it's like, it was kind of like when you're committing, it's in a cap world, you can't commit that much. I mean, I think, my guess is Toronto thought, obviously this is pre-COVID, that the cap was going to be like 90-some million by now. So you'd be able to fit in more. But it's just, it's, seeing these teams with the long-term deals, it's just difficult to fix holes when you're that tight to the cap. And obviously, signing Samsonov was a bargain move for them. They couldn't go out and get a better, pricier goaltender. Defense, they've had to kind of get older guys or guys who are younger who can fit in. But it's hard to fix problems when you're near the cap.
Well, Ted, the thing was, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I ironically, and Stan Fischler wrote a piece for the Hockey News, which was pretty laughable because he said that basically Toronto's problems wouldn't have been as bad had they kept Lou. And I said on the show, and I know this based on the fact that was the year I was covering the team full time. This started with Lou. The problem started with Lou because Lou did not get Nylander, because Lou has a policy to not sign players until the end of their contracts. He could have been proactive and signed Nylander with a year left on his deal after he had one good year. They could have gotten him for 3 or 4, probably 2 or 3 years at least on a bridge deal. They didn't. They waited until the following year. Lou was out the door because they wanted to sign Dubas, and he left Dubas with a bag of shit. Dubas had to handle the Nylander thing right off the go, and Nylander held out until December and got them at the 11th. They got him signed at the 11th hour, but once they succumbed to that, then the precedent was set, and Marner and Matthews followed it. I don't think Tavares was the bad move. I think signing Nylander to the long-term deal was the bad move, and then everything went downhill from there in terms of the 4 guys for $40 million, and it's clearly flawed. But I don't know what they're going to do. And this is the thing: we're hearing so many names right now. I don't know what is realistic and what is BS. I do know that certain names out there, there are big warning signs. I mean, if they go after Stan Bowman and they go Stan Bowman and Joel Quenneville, what a cluster
What
that
would go wrong?
Oh yeah, right off the bat. What do you think? Who do you think would be what do you think the direction that they should go?
Well, I mean, like I said, I think that they're going to have to try to clear some cap space, and they definitely need to work on, defense and goaltending, because I just, I knew before the season, I said they are not going to go anywhere with this tandem. Obviously, Samsonov, he's a good regular season goalie, but obviously the playoff pressure, and they're trying to shield him from the media, and it just he's not a playoff goalie.
He didn't play badly, Ted. I don't think he was at fault. He was not at fault for them losing. I mean, he got hurt. And Wall played pretty decently too. It was not the goaltending that let them down. But I do grant your point. I mean, Russ, please. I wish I had $1 for every time Russ made a Matt Murray joke this year.
I mean, I made an over-under, which I won. I said he wasn't going to be successful because he's not going to be able to play enough. It was obvious.
When he did play, he was successful.
But you can't. It doesn't matter. He didn't do enough for the team to matter for this season. He didn't. And that's the end of the day. That's what really matters here.
And he's going to get bought out, so they're going to clear that.
Yeah, and he'll go to Pittsburgh, and they'll be like, "Oh, Matt Murray will try." And it's like, unless he's healthy, he's going to fail again.
Yep, and those are that goes back to the root of the problem. Those are the goaltenders they could afford. I mean, obviously Samsonov came cheap because obviously they didn't want him in Washington, and there's some questions about his.
They tossed him aside a little too quickly, probably, but he's still. Yeah. I don't know how good he really is still.
Yeah, well, there's some back issues, I think, they were, going back to the ATV accident during COVID, and I think he was given a couple chances to take the starting role in Washington, and he failed miserably. So I think there was a thought that maybe he isn't the guy. But it'll be interesting to see. Is that the Leafs? The first thing they got to clear space, and they got to bolster up their depth in some other areas, because obviously their forwards are fine, but.
Ironically, what's going to end up happening is the same thing. Well, they're not going to not qualify him like Washington did. He's got 1 year until unrestricted free agency. As we welcome Dennis Gorman onto the show, he's 1 year away from unrestricted free agency, so he's an RFA with ARB rights. I think they're just going to qualify him, negotiate a 1-year deal, and they have him and Wall as their goaltenders this year. Now that is what I think they would have done under Dubas with a new administration. They could go out and trade for Connor Hellebuck or trade for John Gibson or go for the big goaltender, because that's been a need for them since Ed Balfour. They need that big goaltender. They haven't had one. They've tried to patchwork with J.S. Jaguar, with James Reimer, with a number of different ones, and it really hasn't worked. So maybe they go a different direction.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Ted, I don't know if you have to go, but if you don't, stick around. So Russ, let's and Dennis, let's talk about the Rangers. First the coaching situation. We've heard Spencer Carberry's name be in the mix. But a couple days ago, the name of Peter Laviolette popped up, and I don't know whether that's just his name being out there because somebody's doing a favor, or if there's actually interest there. What have you heard about the Rangers coaching situation?
Essentially, just to kind of dial back a little bit on Ranger breakup, when they had their breakup day. When the players met with Chris Drury, they complained about Gerard Gallant, that his coaching in the playoffs. Specifically, they needed him to be more X's and O's oriented, and he was giving them encouragement. Well, there's a message that's just not working, and obviously they failed. They lose in the first round of Jersey after going all in with Tarasenko and Kane and Mikola and so on and so forth. So now the idea is they need a coach who's very X's and O's oriented, very detail oriented. And the idea is that Peter Laviolette, for whatever you want to say about him, he is an X's and O's guy. He's a details guy. So that, and I guess, it certainly sounds like he's been, that they're really interested in him because of that. So, we'll see. And the other thing is we have to factor in it's Madison Square Garden. Peter Laviolette is a name, and they like hiring names.
Russ.
Yeah, first thing I want to say is I see Dennis is wearing a Jackson Heights shirt, and I just want to say the people of Jackson Heights and the people of Tempe have something in common. The Tempe people didn't want the planes flying right over their house, but I used to have a friend who lived in Jackson Heights, and man, the planes go right over where everybody lives. It's insane.
That's why my family, we all talk loud, because we had to shout to be heard over the airplane.
But as far as the coaching, and Sheldon Keefe's name is now in the mix too, because why not? The thing is, I don't understand what the Rangers are doing in the sense of what direction they're going, because they had to jump on everybody for coach here, and now they're just stuck in the mix with everybody. And I feel like this is a disadvantage for them. Carberry, fine, but again, he may favor the Capitals over everybody based on his past, and Hershey and Ted talked about that earlier. Laviolette, I'm sorry, I have not been impressed with Laviolette for 4 or 5 years now, or 2 or 3 jobs, however you want to, whatever you want to call it. He's had some okay seasons the first season, sometimes going into the second. But if you're getting Laviolette, you're getting Gallant. It's just a different kind of thing. And he is, again, I just, at this point in time, if you're getting Laviolette, trying to develop still 30% of your team, which you really need to if you want to become a cup contender, to me isn't a great idea. I had some other names out there, but they don't seem like they're coming to fruition. I don't think Jay Pandolfo is going to leave BU because he's just started something there, and usually that's a job that you can keep for like 10 years. So I don't think he's coming. I still would like them to interview Jay Leach. I haven't heard his name, so I don't know.
I said Ted Donato because
I don't think Ted will leave Harvard. It's just such a good job. It's like I said, he's going to risk a 2-year job here with the Rangers, and he could be there. He's been there for over a decade, I believe, and he could be there for another decade. But I think, Dennis, the biggest thing is, while I don't have a great handle, and I think Keefe is certainly in the mix now, the problem is I don't think they know what they're searching for.
Yeah.
I mean, because it sounds like they want a coach who is experienced enough to help them win the cup while developing Capo Caco, Alexis Lafreniere, and some of the other young players in the system. So, it's not a big deal. I mean, those guys are available, easy to hire.
Yeah, I mean, Laviolette seems like he's someone who's the Rangers would be attracted to, like Russ was saying, it's a name. And I think, like, the caveat is it's exactly like Gallant. You've got to win in the first year or two because the team's going to get tired of his act really fast. Right. So every stop he's had, the team has done really well the first 2 years, and there's a tail off. And I think in Washington it wasn't a great fit because he kind of tried to play a system that didn't necessarily fit the players. And so I think the players got kind of tired of it. And clearly by the end of this year, they wanted him gone. But I think, Laviolette seems to be the guy they're gravitating towards. All the breadcrumbs are heading his way, and they seem like if they can get a deal done, that's what guy they're going to get.
Yeah, maybe they'll go for a long-term fix like Mike Babcock. That would work.
No, and look, and even Chris Knobloch, sure, interview him. I just think that the job may be too big for him. He's a smart guy. Like I've told people, I interviewed him when he was with Erie way back in those days. I certainly spoke to him when he was with the Flyers, and he was an assistant there, and he's good. But again, for this job, I don't think it's a good thing. And I went back, and Dennis, I looked at the history of like Hartford or Ranger minor league managers going up and coaching in the big time, and it ain't great.
No, and you look at Chris Knobloch, and people are very high on him, and especially the job he did this year without any, quote unquote, super high end talented guys. But again, if you look at the Rangers with Kreider and Zibanejad and some of these other guys that are closing in on 30, their window to win a cup is next year, maybe next 2 years, maybe 3 at tops. Do you really feel comfortable giving a guy who's never he coached a few games the pandemic year?
When Quinn had COVID,
When Quinn had COVID, right. But are you going to feel really comfortable giving a guy who's maybe has, 6 NHL head coaching games to his name, a team that you want to win a cup, that wants to win a cup, and, by the way, still develop your young players? It doesn't make sense. I don't know what the answer is, and I don't think they know what the answer is.
I mean, who was the coach of the Mystery Alaska team? Bring him in.
Russell Crowe.
Well, he wasn't the coach; he was playing.
No, Burr Reynolds. He's
Burr Reynolds. That's right.
Dead.
Yeah, he's not available.
Yeah. I don't think you can get him back with a 5-year contract.
Although, honestly, if Tex Rickard were around, he would hire Burt Reynolds. I think that's fair.
Yeah, so Reg Dunlop is dead too. Dennis, let me ask you this, because I look at the
Boudreaux. We should bring up Boudreaux, Mike. Sorry, because he is another name, and so I do understand the offensive part of that, Dennis. Would they bring in Boudreaux short term? That's a question.
I don't think so. I think they're looking for someone long term, because they fired David Quinn after 4 years, and now they've just fired Gerard Gallant after 2. I think they want someone who's going to be there for a while.
And I don't know if Boudreaux is an X's and O's guy. I think he's more of a motivational guy.
He's a feel guy. He knows the game. Yeah. He can tell guys what to do. I think he's a feel guy.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the Rangers at this stage, I think Boudreaux is good for a team that's up and coming but needs to pump up its offense, because I know he obviously knows how to activate the D. I don't think the Rangers really fit that category. I think, like I was saying, like even in Washington, I'm not sure he would do a lot of good other than just being a name that people are familiar with. But, he provides an up-tempo, entertaining style, but the Rangers beyond that, they want to try to win in the next couple of years, or they're probably going to.
Let's bring up the joke name that was out there of Patrick Roy, and I know he was carrying a trophy the other day because his team won the Remparts. But Dennis, that would be like the worst possible situation in my eyes.
I mean, it wouldn't be nearly as bad as, say, the Knicks hiring Isaiah Thomas to be the head coach, but
It would be Brian Trottier bad, I think.
No, it would be like Billy. It'd be like Billy Martin without the booze.
Yeah, let's go with that. And by that I mean Brian Trottier. But yes, it would not work well. I mean, we saw Colorado. The first year went great, and the second year he flamed out. And no disrespect to our brethren who cover the Avalanche, it's a slightly more intense market in New York covering the Rangers than it is covering the Avalanche.
Just a little bit. Okay, so let me ask you this, Dennis, because I find the Rangers' potential offseason very intriguing. Start with the UFAs. Tarasenko, Kane, Mott, who they brought back in a trade from Ottawa. Mikkola was part of the Tarasenko deal. And Yaroslav Halak is a backup. You can get a backup anywhere. Of those 4, which one do you think is the most likely to come back and the least likely to come back?
I'd say Mott's the most likely to come back. They got him at the trade deadline last year. He fit in really well. Obviously got him at the trade deadline this year, fit in really well on that fourth line. I don't think he's going to break the bank. Least likely, I think you have to say Patrick Kane, unless he's willing to give them the mother of all discounts. I can't see that happening. Sounds like he's going to need hip surgery this offseason. Apparently his hip had been bothering him all year.
And that could be a 6-month recovery. That could be something long-term. So
right. And I don't know that you can hold, your top line right wing spot open for, 2 months of the season, 3 months of the season. It doesn't work. It does not work. So I think
Russ was really on board with Patrick Kane. I could tell.
No, but I mean, you know, and I think Dennis would have agreed if I had asked him about it, or he would have heard my take. My take was basically, you're bringing him in, you know he's hurt. We've seen this before in the New York area, especially with the Rangers. Most of the time it doesn't work out. He's on a first line. He's now slowed down your first line. So now that first line was susceptible to playing bad defense because Kane would barely even get back on defense. Like, he wasn't even trying. Right. And he had 2 or 3 really good games. Maybe he had 5 altogether the whole year in the playoffs, and that's it.
Well, Ted, this was my assertion.
Wait, hold on.
Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Dennis. Sorry.
Yeah, it never made sense. I mean, from Patrick Kane's standpoint, you want to win a cup. This is a big market team that needed a top line right wing. So I could see where he would want to come here. But once they got Tarasenko, it didn't make any sense to bring him in. And you look at the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Teams still need grit. They need checkers. They need guys that can defend. This Rangers team, I mean, they had 3 scoring lines in one, kind of a hybrid checking grind line, and it didn't work.
And Ted, that's the reason why, I blame Chris Drury for the failings of the Rangers going into the playoffs, because Gallant got to a conference final with guys like Andrew Kopp and with guys like Vetrano and Mott, and not 3 lines of high skill. And that's what he had, and it didn't fit the way he coached. And that's why in the end, I think they lost. So Drury's got to eat some of the responsibility for that. But now, I mean, I don't know where they're going to go with the coach, but like I said, Drury should be blamed for the way that team underperformed.
Yeah, it was strange too, because once they got Tarasenko, then the reports came out how Kane was disappointed he wasn't going to the Rangers, and it just seemed like after that they kind of wanted to try to force him in, and it ended up being subtraction by addition, because as Russ said, you're taking ice time away from the guys who are succeeding, and you're putting a guy who doesn't play D, who's certainly past his prime, and it was just you could tell it just was not an experiment that was working, and there was nothing they could do because they're not going to bench Kane, right. So it's like you're stuck, and it just seemed like it was not a great idea to begin with, but they seem to want to pursue it because Kane wanted it to happen. Mm-hmm. But in some cases, what the player wants is not what's best for the team.
No, Dennis, I started to, a couple days ago. I heard, I don't remember where it was, but I heard rumors of the Rangers shopping Barclay Goodrow, and he's got 4 years left at $3.6 million. And he's a good workman-like player, but he's never going to score 30 goals. That kind of term for that kind of money for that type of player, that's a tough move. I don't know if there are going to be many people, buying in on that one, if that's true, if the rumors are true.
It sounds like, to quote unquote sweeten the pot, they're willing to add in, a 2nd round pick, a 3rd round pick, for a team to take Goodrow on. I tend to think they're going to have to eat some money, which is somewhat of an issue since they're tight to the cap anyway.
Right.
And then it subtracts, from a non-ice point of view, it subtracts one of the areas that they don't have a lot of, which is grit, which is a guy that can defend a forward that can defend. So we'll see how that works out for them.
Russ, that smacks to me of an Yzerman Detroit type of move where they've got tons of cap space, and Goodrow played for him in Tampa Bay. That and if they got a draft pick, that a team like Detroit would sign up for a Goodrow deal like that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to read Yzerman. It is. I don't really know. Like we talk about Steve Yzerman a lot on this show, and based on where they're picking in this year's draft, I don't really know what their projection is anymore. I know that they have to end this rebuild soon, and they have to start turning into a real team. So they're going to do something, but I just don't have a good feel for it.
Right. Now, round the horn here, Ted, you first. Here's where Drury needs to make some pretty decisive choices this summer. Kakko is 1 year away from He's got 1 year left on a deal, making $2.1 million right now. Lafreniere his ELC is up, so you've got to assign him to an extension. And Keandre Miller, coming off it's sort of an up and down year, is an RFA. I don't know if they have the money. Maybe this is the reason why they're trying to trade Goudreau. I don't know if they have the money to sign all three of them. So I don't know which one of them do you think is the odd man out?
It's tough because obviously Kakko's come in and never really adjusted. And if you get a guy like Laviolette behind the bench, Laviolette's not known for developing young guys. I mean, obviously that was one of the complaints a lot of people had in Washington, that guys like McMichael are still in Hershey and not playing up in the NHL. And I don't know how it'll develop. I mean, Lafreniere, it's tough. A number one overall, do you part with him? Keandre Miller obviously is a little bit less known among hockey fans, but I think he probably is a bit more valuable piece down the road. He's not going to be spectacular, but he's going to give you a piece that you're going to need. I guess if I had to part with one of the three, it'd probably be Kakko, just because he's been so inconsistent, and obviously he never lived up to the World Junior pedigree that he had when he got drafted so high. But it's going to be a tough decision because, as I said, if they bring in a coach and it's not going to play the young guys, then it's not going to get any better for them.
I'll say this. Oh, sorry. Like Goudreau, I don't think anybody wants him. Not because he can't play, but that the term on him is just too much. And he is at a height in salary that nobody wanted to really go to except the Rangers. So I think Goudreau is there. Kakko was great against Jack Hughes defensively. Like he was. He really helped shut him down. And he has become a really good defensive forward and their best cycler in the corners. And I do think you should let his game continue to mature that way and not worry about how much of a scorer he is. Because guess what? Everybody's not going to be a 30-goal scorer in this league. I still believe in Lafreniere. I think if he had more power play time, more opportunity, or if they actually left the kid line together for more than like 10 games in a row at a time, he would have more points even, and his points have been going up. I think Miller is the odd man out. I think Miller is the one you should try and trade because they have other pieces in their group that can replace Miller. And then if you have to go out and get just a veteran defenseman, I think they could. The problem with Miller is he's really good at moving the puck. He's not that physical. He started to turn the puck over a little bit too much, kind of like Brady Shea. And Shea has definitely, become better again with better instruction and the way Carolina plays. But I think the way the Rangers play isn't going to be conducive for Miller because of Fox. If they didn't have Fox, then Miller could take that role and sort of do that. And he wouldn't score as much as Fox, but he would score a little more. But since he can't, and you're relying on him to be a little more defensive, I don't think that's his role either. I mean, I think you should trade him and get something for him because he could definitely get something good for him.
Dennis, if they keep Miller, I'm looking at it, comparables. I think he on a shorter term deal, he's going to get probably $4.5, $5 million. So can they afford him? And if same question of those three, which one do you think is the odd man out?
I mean, they could afford it. They wouldn't have any other cap room to do anything else. So that would be difficult. I mean, I tend to agree with Russ that Miller's probably the guy that would have to get traded, simply because right now, what he is, he's probably more valuable than Kakko or Lafreniere. Kakko and Lafreniere, their development's been stunted because they've had guys in front of them. So they don't get power play time. Their 5-on-5 time is limited. So we kind of don't know what they are. We don't know if they are legitimate first-line guys, second-line guys, or if they're just guys. So I don't know that you can trade them and get enough back in a deal to make it worthwhile. Whereas with Miller, you could say, look, this guy plays 20 minutes a night. He plays against top competition. He puts up some numbers. You would think there are some teams that could use a defenseman like that. And he's still, 22, 23?
Oh, yeah. No, the age is there. You could get him on a longer-term deal after this year. Yeah, I just think he's a tradable guy. I think Schneider can go up and play a different role. I don't know if Matthew Robertson's ready or they believe in Zach Jones. I like Zach Jones. Maybe under a different coach he'll get a chance because I do think he could do some things. But if not, then you just bring in another veteran. I think Mikkel is there for another year, right?
No, he's a UFA.
Is he UFA?
He's a UFA, but
I try and bring him back. He did pretty good.
Yeah, and I can't imagine teams are going to break the bank for him, and especially as a third pair D, he was fine, and look at the end of the year when Ryan Lindgren was out, he slotted in with Adam Fox, and played really well.
Yeah, you might be able to get him on for like a 2-year deal. I mean,
yeah.
I compare him to sort of like a Yanni Hakanpää with Dallas, just a big, rangy, physical.
You know what? He filled the role they thought Patrick Nemeth could and never could.
Yes.
Right. He's more mobile than Nemeth. So,
yeah.
All right, let's finish with this because the way the NHL and the way the way the NHL and the whole situation that's being approached with the Arizona Coyotes really it's like a bug up my rear end because honestly, it's like I want this team to move because this situation has gone on for 20 years. They clearly cannot get together. Ownership, team management, the building, it just hasn't worked, Ted. And I hoped, I prayed that the vote in Tempe would be the final nail in the coffin, but they keep trying to keep this, this dead body alive. They're looking for land. Now they're looking at a plan B. Now they may move back to the America West Arena, which started this whole thing in the first place 25 years ago. When is this friggin' thing gonna end?
Well, I think the problem is it doesn't sound like ownership wants to sell, and there's very limited people in that area who want to deal with them. I know there was talk about maybe moving to reservation land, and they were saying the tribal leaders don't want to deal with current ownership.
Well, they don't want hockey. Like, come on.
Well, they don't want. I mean, no one trusts this guy because obviously, they had an arena deal in Glendale. They got kicked out, and everyone sees him as the group that won't pay taxes. I mean, like and Mike was saying, if the Suns, they go to the Suns arena, the Suns owner is going to want to buy them.
Right, that's what you said that already. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to move to Houston or Salt Lake, it's going to require them to sell the team. So it's. It seems like the NHL is going to try to cajole them to sell the team, but the problem is, as long as they don't want to sell, it really binds them because there's only so many options that want to deal with these people.
The other things are going to start falling apart. Like Logan Cooley may never show up there if all this is happening, and Clayton Keller is going to eventually ask for that trade when the
yes, Dennis,
when the spotlight is off of him.
The biggest sham here is that this whole thing that Clayton Keller's dad's Twitter handle was hacked. Who the hell would hack that? I mean, and what he would hack it to go out and say, "Oh, the Arizona situation is untenable, and my son wants out." No, if somebody hacked his Twitter handle, they would go out and put porn links or something like that.
A hacker doesn't hack you and come out with information that only a few people would know.
Right.
Like, that's not the job of a hacker.
I mean, it's just like I went to a game out at Mullen Arena this year, and it was, it's a great college arena, but it's embarrassing to have an NHL team play there. I mean, it was over $100 a ticket. 80% of the fans were visiting fans because no one locally is going to pay $100 to see the Coyotes. And it's got to end. And the fact they're going to play a lame duck year, and I mean, it's hard to imagine a scenario.
They can't play the 2. Like, I know they have a 2-year lease, Ted, but they can't do it because the problem is, if they need a year ahead because of the way booking is in arenas and such, then this decision has to be made in a few months.
Yeah,
Dennis, the thing here that I mean, apparently the league has tamped down the ire of the PA because the PA is starting to make noise about this because players are there's hotel situations, there's locker room situations. I mean, this has got to end, doesn't it?
You would think so. I mean, this has been a failure for 20 years. It simply hasn't worked. And now, when you have other cities in that state, the residents voting against a building for this team, and there doesn't seem to be a pathway for a positive future other than selling the team to someone in Salt Lake or Houston. But there's also some speculation that the league is waiting on Salt Lake and Houston to put in an expansion bid because you're looking at starting around $800 million, to buy into the league. And if you move the Coyotes to either Salt Lake or Houston, one of those markets, you're not making that $800 million in expansion fees.
Maybe Snoop Dogg will buy the Coyotes. I mean, he's supposedly in on buying the Ottawa Senators. And
I mean, if I had any talent, I would basically airbrush in a player from the Coyotes in Star Trek because they're wearing the red shirt, and you know what happens to those guys when they're on Star Trek.
Oh, you mean Chief Security Officer Wilson, the one who dies when the
anybody who ever had one died. It's just, if I had any kind of talent, I would do that because you just know that this is just going to fizzle and this is their last gasp. But again, the owner is just like putting up all this bluster like, hey, we're back in Mullet and don't worry, we've got plans. And hey, it's going to be in the Valley now. And it's like, where were all these deals lining up before the Tempe deal failed? That's my question.
Pick where our new building is going to be, and I tweeted a picture of Val Kilmer from Tombstone. I said your franchise is as dead as Julius Caesar. I mean, it's just. I mean, I
feel bad for the players and the fans to a degree because I feel like
all six of
the fans are just going on this roller coaster ride, and eventually it's just not going to end well. We see it just doesn't end well 99% of the time. So I do feel bad.
And it's unnecessary because, like I said, they had a deal in Glendale and they blew it. And now they're, why does Phoenix need 3 NHL-sized arenas? They don't. No. They basically been trying to, make something that's not going to work. And, there's one plausible scenario list and almost all of them involve selling the team, and I don't think they're going to sell the team, and they need to sell it just for the good of the franchise because clearly they're not getting anything done.
Hell, it didn't make sense to have 3 NHL-sized buildings in the greater New York area when you had Nassau Coliseum, and Barclays and MSG, and now you have UBS. So it's it's just.
I just think the way they run under the cap, the way that they rarely sign their own guys and end up trading them. At some point, it's just going to run its course. And I hope for their fans' sake that they don't lose Logan Cooley. But I can't guarantee that's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, he won't be able to go anywhere for 3 years, Russ. So you would hope that franchise by that time will.
Mike, we say this.
No, I know. No,
we keep getting older, and this deal just keeps getting pushed down.
And we all thought when the vote was, voted down, I thought that was it. And now they're like, oh, well, we still have a plan B. No, you're asking on Twitter where you're going to move. You don't have a plan.
Obviously, Dennis, the NHL hired most of the Hillary Clinton campaign because they miscounted what they thought was going to be the vote in Tempe. They thought it was going to pass, and they ended up losing. And then they've been caught with their pants down, and that's why I think this right now over the last couple of weeks has just been a complete cluster F because they were caught by surprise.
Yeah, and it sounds like the Coyotes didn't put it in a whole lot of time or money into kind of getting out the vote. They thought it was. My understanding is they thought it was a done deal, right. And. Well,
they were hoping for a low turnout. That's what I kept hearing. And when I was speaking to people about this and on this show more than a few times, after doing research, I'm like, it's not going to be a low turnout. And there are a lot of people against this. And it seemed like I was like one of the only people saying that this deal wasn't going to happen. And again, then you find out they got a record number of, older people will say to show up because there were a lot of things they didn't want to pay for. And also things like planes flying over these new homes and getting close to their houses. And they didn't want any of that. So they were like, no, we're voting this down. And I'm not a political guy. Mike's more political than I am as far as knowing the workings. But anytime you want to get 3 different three different things passed on the same ticket, getting people to say yes, 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 very hard to do.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to the Nassau Coliseum too. They had the vote in the town of Hempstead, and this was you're basically getting, by having the town vote, you're getting all the NIMBYs in one spot, whereas the fan base is spread out all over the area. So you're
I live still in North Massapequa. There's no way I was driving to Hempstead for this vote.
It's pretty sad, Ted, when Charles Wong and the Lighthouse Project situation with the Islanders was more organized than what was going on in Tempe.
That was a better deal too.
Yeah, and I have no idea why they didn't think. As I privately said for months, I said this is a really good chance of failing because of the way it was set up, and they didn't seem to take it seriously. And I don't, with your franchise at stake, I have no idea why you wouldn't have a contingency plan or get out the vote, but. It just seems that they weren't organized, but this is typical of this ownership group. They just screw things up.
Well, one final thing before we end the show, just officially announced, we'd heard it for the last couple of days. Craig Conroy, the new general manager of the Calgary Flames, former Leafs and Canucks GM Dave Nonis as VP of Hockey Operations and Assistant General Manager, Brad Pascal and Chris Snow as assistant GMs. And also there was some speculation, and maybe it will come to fruition over the next few months, but that Jerome McGinley would have some sort of stake in the management of the Flames going forward, but it wasn't announced today. So that's official. So right now we have Toronto and we have Pittsburgh still as GM openings, and Dubas is being mentioned in Pittsburgh, and there's a lot of names that will track about the Leafs job. So
the thing I'll say about the job before we go up is just what I said on Sirius. I've had a lot of conversations with Conroy. He was on Hockey Prospect Radio more than a few times. A very bright guy with a lot of energy. If Nonis is kind of in there as the guardrail guy, okay, I'm fine with that. If he has more influence than that, I don't think it's fair to Conroy, because I think he really needs to be given a chance here, and I think he will be, and I like that for Calgary. They need some help.
Okay. All right. Great job, guys. Thanks to Dennis Gorman and Ted Starkey for joining us. For us, Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.